I like to be able to have some visuals. I'm a very visual person. So we have a PowerPoint here. What I'd like to talk to you tonight about is about embracing change. And what are some helpful strategies as you go about doing this? Now, if you look at the word embracing, it is an action verb. And if you look it up in the dictionary, it says to accept willingly and enthusiastically. So I'd like to ask you a question. How is embracing change different from tolerating change? Okay, I'd like you to think about that as we go on through. Now, have you ever wanted something and then you got it, only to have things completely change? Well, that's something that happened to me. After teaching at Ricks College, a 2-year college, I applied for a full-time faculty position. This was the time when President Bednar was there, before he became Elder Bednar, one of the apostles. I loved teaching and it was wonderful, and my dream came true. I got the notice that I was hired on as full-time faculty, and I was thrilled for it. A little apprehensive, but thrilled to do it. And I had been teaching there 7 years, so I felt I knew what would be going on. Well, a few weeks later, it was later in June, all the employees and the students at Ricks College got a phone call on Friday evening. And they said, come to the Hart building the next morning for an announcement. So we showed up the next day at the Hart building, and none of us really knew what was going on. They did tell us that morning that there would be a broadcast from Salt Lake City, and that it was President Gordon B. Hinckley's birthday, and that he wanted to talk to us. And so we were excited to hear what he had to say. When President Hinckley announced that Ricks College would transition to a 4-year university and would be called BYU Idaho, everyone was so excited. You could just hear this big whoop, come up in the Hart building. They were really excited. And I, along with them, was very excited. But then I stopped to think, and my heart stopped, and I began to feel a little stress. Oh my, what have I gotten myself into? Is this something that I am going to be able to do? You know, there's a quote by Marvin J. Ashton that I like. He said, there is nothing so unchanging, so inevitable as change itself. There is a tendency for people to think of change as the enemy. When change is thought through carefully, it can produce the most rewarding and profound experiences in life. Now, I want to emphasize just a little bit. When change is thought through carefully, it can be the most rewarding and profound experience in life. So I do want to let you know that over the next 20 years that I worked at BYU Idaho, I had many, many rewarding experiences. I also had many, many challenges that were very, very difficult to do. And President Bednar would tell us that we needed to seek personal revelation to know how to approach it. When Kimby Clark came on as president of BYU Idaho, he told us that there would continue to be change and that we needed to get good at it. So, what are some helpful strategies to change? My first reaction to the announcement was excitement, and then I will admit a little bit of anxiety and fear in myself on, am I up to this? Am I up to developing courses that can work through for a bachelor's level coming through? Now, as I thought over this and thought about the devotional, I came up with 3 strategies that I think is helpful to embrace change as it comes through, to get through it, to learn how to calm down the anxiety, to give yourself a better picture of what is going on. The strategies are: recognize change provides opportunities for growth. Choose to act and not react, and hold fast to that which is good. So I'd like to start off by talking about the first one. Recognize change provides opportunities for growth. And indeed, I did grow a great deal with the changes that I experienced at BYU, Idaho. I would like to show you an analogy based on something my husband loves to do. He loves growing plants. In my place back home, we have plants in almost every room of our house, and they look beautiful. My father said he not only had a green thumb, which is a common terminology for a very good gardener, but he had green fingers as well, because everything seemed to grow so well. Now, I thought the plants were doing extremely well. They looked good, and I didn't pay much attention beyond that. But my husband noticed they had stopped growing. The reason they had stopped growing is because they were root bound. They had been in this confined, tight place, and the roots had nowhere to go but to go round and round. And that limited the growth on the plant and eventually would kill the plant. So he learned what you had to do to take care of this. He would take the plant out of the pot. Do you see the roots that are there? Okay. And he would take a pair of snippers and actually go in and start cutting the roots. When I saw that, I thought that he was killing the plant, but he reassured me everything was just right. The next step, he would shake out excess dirt that was in there and pull the roots apart. Then he would take a larger pot, put fresh soil in that had good nutrients for the plant, and he repotted the plant by packing the soil around it. And when all was done, he would kind of prune the top to shape it, and then give it a drink of water. Did the plant take off right away and start growing? What do you think? And if you can see me, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Did the plant start growing right off? Some people are saying, I don't know. Well,
So usually plants need some time.
okay, well said. The plant needed a little time to readjust from being disrupted from a familiar environment. It needed a little extra tender care. Because of the disrupted root system, it needed to be watered a little bit more often. It needed to have some fertilizer given to it, and so it could grow a little bit better. But after a while, you could see the effect of change on the plant as it started to take on a new life and grow again. Now, when you and I experience major changes in life, we may also need to recognize that we need a little extra care. We need a little bit more TLC, or tender loving care. And perhaps one of the people that we need it most from is ourselves. We need to be kind to ourselves. Too often we think that if we talk sternly to ourselves and kind of bully ourselves a little bit, that would get us up and going and doing better. But that is not always the case. I would like to share with you a little video.
Bullies. They are relentless. They never let up, always judging, always making us feel we are not good enough and worthless. We would not hesitate to stand up for someone that is bullied, unless that bully is our own critical inner voice. We are taught to be compassionate and caring to others just as Christ was. We take care of our friends and family without a second thought. So why do we exclude ourselves from the same compassion? We think being critical of ourselves will push us to be better. So instead of slowing down and taking care of ourselves when we experience something hard, we speed up. Elder Holland is taught, as children of God, we should not demean or vilify ourselves, as if beating up on ourselves is somehow going to make us the person God wants us to become. No, the antidote for the poison of self-criticism is self-compassion. If self-compassion is the solution, what does that even mean? And how do we get started? Maybe instead of being our own worst enemy, we become our own best friend. Self-kindness is key to self-compassion. It is the desire to be gentle and understanding with ourselves when facing pain, rather than being harshly critical and judgmental of ourselves. If you had a friend that felt like they were a failure or not good enough, what kind words would you say to them to show support? Those are the types of things you should say to yourself. Understanding that pain and failure are part of a shared human experience is another key component of self-compassion. Everyone goes through difficult times. We are not alone when we face our challenges. Just as you would remind a close friend, remind yourself it's not fair to compare our difficult times with others because we don't always see what they are struggling with, and that we all have flaws and mistakes that are part of the entire process of becoming like Christ. We also need to understand the importance of being mindful. We need to see our negative thoughts and emotions as they are, instead of ignoring them. But we don't want to define ourselves by our failures and frustrations. Remember that you have value no matter your situation. Even though we can't make our challenges disappear, we can take an honest, balanced view of our emotions. This mindset will apply to any realm of difficulties, whether it's family, work, marriage, finances, or whatever is causing pain. If you can change the way you talk to yourself, it will prepare you to deal with life's challenges and embrace your flaws. Remember, everyone is a child of God who is deserving of love, forgiveness, and patience, and that includes you.
You know, when a challenge comes, especially one that is very difficult, sometimes through the anxiety and the stress, we feel like we need to be better, to do better. And I'm going to encourage you to give yourself permission to not be perfect. I'd like to introduce you to a word that I have found very good to put into your vocabulary when you are facing new things and learning, that you can use when you talk to yourself. And that word is yet. There is great power in the word yet. Now, I would like to share with you just a little bit as I struggled with a challenge and working through things. I want to do things a little bit better. For example, something that that I'm foreseeing after I finish this mission with my husband, I would like to go on another mission, and this time do it in family history, in family search. To prepare myself, I'm taking a lesson or a course in how to read old script. Can any of you read that? I looked at it and I just shook my head. I had no idea that that word here would mean year. That word here means the. It's an old script and they did things differently back then. I learned how to tell myself, I'm making progress. I'm not there yet in learning how to continue to pull things together. Now, the power of yet. Try replacing some of the words that you commonly tell yourself, such as, I can't do this, with, I can't do this yet. I'm not good at this yet. I don't understand this. Have any of you felt that in any of your classes that you're taking at school? I see a person nodding their head. I've been in classes when I was in my doctorate that I felt like I was swimming in an ocean of knowledge and I was trying to understand and make sense of it. And I had to tell myself, I don't understand this yet. But the more I worked with it, the more I began to understand things. It doesn't work yet. This doesn't make sense yet. I would really like to encourage you to learn how to talk to yourself with compassion and learn how to recognize when there are huge challenges up above, that you do not have to be perfect. Give yourself permission not to be perfect. Matter of fact, when we were working at creating new classes for BYU Idaho, one of the other faculty there suggested, he says, give yourself permission to fail with something, because you can then learn from it. You take that stress from you and you can learn from it. And so that, especially with huge, big changes that come, learn that change can give you great opportunity for growth, and also learn how to talk to yourself kindly as you go through the change. Now, my second thing that I'd like to tell you a little bit about is something that President Kim B. Clark taught us. And he said, choose to act and don't react. Now, I would like to illustrate this a little bit with you. I want you to know that this particular strategy can take a little bit of practice, because it's so easy to react based on what you think is going on, your past experiences. The goal is to get into the habit of stop, think, and choose what you will do. I'd like to share with you a story about my grandmother. And yes, she lived a little while ago, but I'm not strongly old, but yes, she did live a little while ago. And I like President Gordon B. Hinckley's advice on it is good to look for the past to gain appreciation for the present and perspective for the future. So Letty was fun-loving, very talented. She loved to write. She grew up in Bluff, Utah in the late 1800s. Now, one of the things that by the way, this is James, her husband that she married. One of the things that she absolutely loved to do was to ride her horse and buggy, and she was very good at it. And she took pride in being very good. As a matter of fact, sometimes she would challenge other people to a race with their horse and buggy, and she usually won. She was in control. She knew how to urge the horse on, and she knew how to stop the horse by bracing her feet on the board, pulling back on the reins, and shouting, "Whoa!" Now, there's a period of change coming up in that in the early 1900s, there was a change in the transportation industry, and the Model T Ford was new on the market and began replacing buggies as a means of transportation. And James, her husband, bought a Model T Ford. Well, my Letty felt pretty confident because she could, she could drive the horse and buggy well. So one day she decided that she would visit her husband, who was working out in the farm, out in the fields. She loaded the children in the back seat of the car and started off. She felt pretty confident as she knew how to start it and put it into gear and to go with it. All went really well until she came to a ditch. And automatically, she reacted by yelling out, "Whoa!" And she pulled back on the steering wheel and pushed her foot down on the petrol. And the Model T Ford zoomed ahead and jumped the ditch. Well, her children kind of enjoyed that excitement, but Letty was very shaken. It was not what she was expecting. She was a little bit discouraged. And do you know what? She never drove again. She had not learned the word yet. A lesson that we can learn from this is sometimes our natural response is going to be based on our past experiences. And this can lead to some very bumpy transitions. Now, if only Letty could see transportation now. I often wonder, when you are my age, I'm 65, so when you get older and get to be my age, what will the transportation be like then? And you'll probably have some learning experiences to go along with it. Now, I want to introduce you to a word. And this is quite a word that you might want to add to your vocabulary. It goes with the challenge that I'm going to be giving you. In that, I want you to learn how to develop processes that will work well. Automaticity. Do any of you know what that word means? Some are going, a little. Okay. It means that you will do something without conscious thought or action. Automaticity. It's based on things that you do repetitively. Now, the challenge, learn how to develop the habit of stop, think, and then choosing to act and not to react. That can take some skills. Some people like to stop and count to 10 to help them through. Other people have other strategies that they get through with this. Some will say, rather than telling themselves, just don't stand there, do something, and reacting to it, to tell themselves, stand there, stop, think, and then choose what it is that you would like to do. And it will make the transition of that you will be experiencing with change go so much better than it did before. Okay, my third and last option I want to share with you. Hold fast to that which is good. Now, you may not know exactly what I'm thinking on this, but part of embracing change is knowing what not to change. You want changes to occur in yourself that will help you along life's journey to become more like our Heavenly Father. And there are unchanging principles that will guide you to do this. So learn how to have those secure principles in your life that you don't change. I'm going to tell you a story of my father. Does he look a little young in that picture? No? Well, we tend to have what we used to call the family curse. We tended to look very, very young. But he was about 22 in that picture, and he joined in the Army in 1943. Now, World War II was raging across Europe, and before he left to join the boot camp for training, he was given a blessing. And part of the blessing told him this: others would have as their purpose the destruction of his ideals. And then he was promised that if he was humble, courageous, kept himself morally and spiritually clean, that those who were inclined to ridicule and oppress him would be rebuked. And many of those people would later come to look up to him. So, first story. At the train station, as he was getting ready to go to boot camp, his mother told him, "Son, remember, praying will keep you from sinning, and sinning will keep you from praying. Always remember to pray." So the first night that he had in the barracks, after the lights were turned out, he got out, knelt by his bunk, and began to say out loud a nightly prayer. He could hear others that were around him mocking him and hooting that he would actually be praying. He said at that point in his life, he didn't realize that he could say his nightly prayers a little bit more quietly, but he continued to follow his mother's advice and decided that he would pray. As the group was getting ready to go out, and many of them realizing that there would be battles that they soon would face, the ones that had mocked him asked him, "Please say a prayer for me too." And they looked up to him. Now, another story that I would like to share. Would you like to hear another one? Okay. Because he looked so young, he had some problems. And that was when he was brought in to what they call officer training school. They liked the way he responded to people. They liked his character. So they says, "We're going to train you." And so he was being trained to become an officer. He said it was tough. It was very tough. And many people that were brought into the program dropped out. It was getting towards the very end. And pretty soon he would be giving his officer. He'd be made an officer. And so he felt pretty good, but he wanted to do well. His officer over him, the one that was over him, brought this person and my father into his office and said, "Your grades are good. As a matter of fact, they are the best in the class. But you can't be an officer. You look way too young. What I want you to do is that I want you to go on leave. I would like for you to go and drink a little, find some girls, go see if you can age a little and come back. And if you will do that, I will let you continue and make you an officer." My father looked at him and said, "If that's what it takes to be an officer, I don't want it." Would that be hard to do? He got kicked out of school just before he would have graduated. And that was a price he paid. Now, he went over into Europe. He was in many of the battles that were there. Have any of you heard of Battle of the Bulge? It was the largest land battle in World War II, and it raged from December 1944 to the end of January 1945. My father survived. At the end of the war, a general came up to him. This is General Uncles. And he asked Cliff to be his aide-de-camp. That is a person that will follow a general around, and he will plan all the meetings, he'll plan all the dinners, he makes sure everything goes well. He's kind of like, person that makes sure everything works and does well. And so he asked Cliff, he said, "Will you do this?" And my father responded, "Sir, I need you to know that I am a Mormon. And so I don't drink or smoke." The officer responded, "I know that, but the job is yours if you care to have it." Huge changes came about from the battlefield going in. And so I don't know if you know this person. This is General Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was a 5-star general and the supreme commander of the Allied forces in Europe at the end of World War II. What happened next to my father, really brought home to my father the blessing that he had given him. My father was in with a group of people who were a group of other officers that were there who began to make fun of him because he didn't drink and he didn't smoke. And they ridiculed him in front of General Eisenhower. How would you feel being made fun of in front of the supreme commander of the Allied forces? It really belittled him a little bit. General Eisenhower stepped in and demanded, he said, "You stop that for Captain Johnson. I smoke and I wish I didn't. And I don't want you making fun of him." In my father's blessing, he was told that if he would be humble, courageous, and keep himself morally and spiritually clean, that those who were inclined to ridicule him and oppress him would be rebuked. My father felt that blessing was fulfilled with this incident that happened here. Now, I just have one last story to tell you. Do you remember the officer that kicked my father out of officer training school? part of the duties that my father had and with General Uncles, who he was the aide camp for, was to review the troops. It was the end of the war. They were needing to keep the troops in line before they were being sent back home and so forth. And so they went to review the troops. Guess who was one of the officers with all the people that he had under him out there to be reviewed by my father and General Uncles? The man that had kicked him out of OTS, out of the officer school, training school. Another part of the blessing came to pass, that there would be those that made fun of him and would ridicule him, but that would come to look up to him. So when you're in change and positions that require a lot of change, I'm going to recommend to you, hold fast to that which is good. Hold to the standards that you have. You will be blessed for it. It may take a couple of years before you see the impact of it. Things can be a little hard. Remember to treat yourself kindly and hold fast to the principles of the gospel. Now, have any of you ever been in a storm? I've been in a couple of them. I remember being at a game with one of my children when they were young, and we were out in the field and a huge wind came up, and then it started to pour with rain. And then it started to come down with the hailstorms. I don't know if you've ever had hail that's pretty big, that just beat upon us. And it was hard. I think of that when I think of this scripture. It is one of my favorite scriptures that I learned in seminary many years ago, found in Helaman 5:12. It says, remember that it is upon the rock of our Redeemer, who is Christ, the Son of God, that ye must build your foundation, that when the devil shall send forth his winds, yea, his shafts in the whirlwind, yea, when all his storm and his mighty hail shall beat upon you, it shall have no power over you, because of the rock upon which ye are built, which is a sure foundation, a foundation whereon if men build, they cannot fall. In the midst of change, have that solid foundation, and it will get you through. So, in summary, you're going to be experiencing a lot of changes. We have seen many, many changes this year. My heart is broken with many of the changes that have happened. And you will see more come along. You will also see some wonderful good changes that you feel that you're not quite up to yet. Please recognize that change provides opportunity for growth. Choose to act and not to react, and hold fast to that which is good. And I'd like to share that thought with you in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you so much, Sister Cook, for a lovely reminder. And I really like that you said the power of yet. We could open for about 5 minutes for questions, if there is a question. I could ask the question, and then if anyone else have a question, please raise your hand and let us know. My question would be, what would you suggest to someone who struggles with accepting changes when there is a change that needs to happen. You know, sometimes you're forced to make and do a change. What would you suggest to someone who struggles with accepting the change?
To accept it, remember the 3 things that I shared with you, but I'm going to encourage, get down on your knees and pray for guidance. Remember I told you that I needed to develop new classes? Well, I was teaching classes that I hadn't taken for 19 years when I was put in this area, and I was developing it, which involved a lot of study on my side, and then trying to put things together with the way we were encouraged using the learning model to teach students. And there were times before I left to go in to teach the students, I would get down on my knees in my office and plead with the Lord, please help me, because I know I am inadequate, but with thy help, I can do it. And the amazing thing was, those first 2 years that I taught with such turmoil and change and all these things going on, the students that I taught did really well. And they went on and got very good jobs. And I attribute it to the Spirit helping us, helping me teach and helping them learn. So when you get faced with a change that you just don't know how you're going to do it, how to accept it, how to come through, I would recommend a good heart-to-heart with Heavenly Father, and He may not answer you right away, because there were times when I walked into the classroom and I just had to take a deep breath and say, I'm taking a step in the dark. But after taking that step in the dark, He helped me. So that would be the first suggestion that I would suggest. I would also recommend identify what feelings you have going on. Why is it that the change is so hard to accept? Is it because you feel inadequate? Is it because you feel you've been cheated out of a position? What is it that is driving those feelings? Because the more you understand them, the more you can identify how to approach it and to work with it. At times, at first, things just don't seem fair. And sometimes change isn't fair. But you're taking a pretty myopic view of it if you just look at that short range of time, even if it lasts 2-3 years. Does that?
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful answer. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions before we end?
I
Yeah?
see 2 hands. Let's come up here with the lovely people from Spain. Okay. Yes. If you can unmute.
So we had a question that it was regarding, what's the difference between BYU? Like, I know it's a university from the church. What is the difference between it and a normal university with prestige?
And the online university?
Yeah.
There's many things that are the same. And I was involved in helping to create some of the online classes and helping to work with that. But there are some things that are different. On campus, we get to meet face to face and have some interaction that way. When we started to develop online classes, people would say, you can't teach religion online like that. But I can testify to you that the Spirit is the true teacher. And yes, you can do that. So there are 2 different environments. Both of them have advantages and disadvantages. There are some very definite things that I really like with online that you don't get on campus. I'm currently taking, I took last semester a class in that old script. Do you remember I showed you that crazy picture where you're trying to read? This semester, I'm taking one in family history. And there are things that I really like about the flexibility of time and being able to talk to more people. Another difference on campus, you have a little bit wider variety of majors that you can major in. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, because I'm doing a bachelor right now, so I don't know if it will be beneficial for me to do my master's in BYU, if it will be possible.
Okay, so BYU Idaho doesn't have a master's program, and Gordon B. Hinckley was very clear on that. You're just going to be a four-year university that focuses on teaching. And that helped evolve into letting the online environment and BYU Pathway Worldwide develop. Whether or not to go on to a master's depends on what you are doing. I did my bachelor's and then married and had my children. And I didn't go back I did my bachelor's and I didn't go back for my master's. Yeah, let's get this right. Master's until a few years later, 16 years. But I gained a lot of very good experience during that time. And I did go back. I got my master's in public health. And then it took about another 7-8 years before I went back and got my doctorate. So there can be a time and a season for everything. And for me, I don't think I would change a thing with the way I did it. I would strongly suggest study it out in your mind, make a decision, and take it to the Lord.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, there was a question in the Camora Academy. Yes. The mic's not on yet.
Yes, just thank you. I was just gonna, I guess, well, re-ask. Like, so, thank you very much for your speech. What I got is that, like, when we talk, we don't, like when we do something, we like something new. We don't need to rely on like our past experience. Was kind of similar thing like that lady with car and horse, instead of pulling the brake, she's like pulling the the ropes.
So the key thing here is to act. Now, your past experience is very, very valuable. And I recommend that you consider your past experience as you choose how to act. But I caution you against reacting. That instant, I've done this is the way I usually respond. For example, some people, when they have a person that drives in front of them and makes them mad, they get very mad and will say not kind things to it. That's a reaction. And perhaps they need to stop and think and choose a better choice that it would be more beneficial for them and the others. So past experiences are wonderful. The quote from President Hinckley in "Look to the past to learn and to the present to experience, and then you can look to the future for goals to set." So don't totally ignore your past, but I'm counseling you to develop the habit not to react. Does that help?
Well, kind of. So what I get, like, don't react on like our current circumstances, but look on the past for experience and look in the future for goals. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So don't totally throw the past away from you. That's not what I'm saying, because you're going to learn from the past. But before you react, stop and think. And then make a choice. Use that moral agency that you've been given to stop and think, and then make a choice on how to act that will help you. If you look at this, Laman and Lemuel in the Book of Mormon, they reacted to everything. They murmured. You know, it just seemed like things came along, an angel came to them, but they were so reactive. They murmured every time. Now, Nephi struggled a little bit too, but he stopped and thought about it, and then chose to act by asking the Lord to help him understand and not murmur. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions?
I have another question.
Wonderful.
So I was you said there was like we need to let ourselves be imperfect, or
Mhm.
like there was like two things, like to be like letting ourselves to be imperfect, or to have this kind of like imposter mode off. I didn't
Okay.
really get that.
Okay. Some people feel that in order to succeed, they have to do everything perfectly. Especially in school, you will see this happen. They need to do everything perfectly. And what you need to realize is sometimes you put forth your very best effort, and I recommend you put forth your very best effort, but it won't be perfect. You'll get work handed back to you that maybe you didn't get as high a marks as you thought you would. As an instructor, I had some students who said, but I worked very hard. And why didn't I get 100%? They usually are got like 89% or something, but it's because they hadn't learned how to do it yet. Notice I used the word yet. So give yourself some space as you're learning, and don't require to be perfect all the time. Do your best to go, for your goals. I liked it this way, and it was General Relief Society president. The name doesn't come quite to mind, but it's one that I really like, is let your goals be stars to steer by and not sticks to beat you with. Does that help? So I want you to aim, do your best. That's wonderful. But don't beat yourself up if you are not there yet. Keep on trying. There is and I've had to learn this lesson through my life and areas that I remember failing a test, and it was in a subject I thought I was pretty good in. And that was perhaps one of the best things that happened to me. But at first I just reacted, I pulled into myself, and I just told myself over and over, I failed, I failed, I failed. Now, how did that make me feel? Absolutely terrible. Strange thing is, I excelled in that class. That one test did not destroy me academically. I did very well. So realize that if you didn't get completely there after trying your hardest, there yet, but that you can continue to work to be there. Don't beat yourself up over it. Just use that word yet. Okay?
Pretty cool. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So I really like a phrase that it says, if you have it on your mind, then you have it in your hand. So yet it's like, maybe it's not in this time, maybe it's gonna be forward in the future. That's what. So yeah, I really like that.
All right, I think we should, if there are no more questions, I think we could close. Sister Cook, once again, thank you so much for such a lovely evening and for everything you taught us and answering your questions. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate that, being with us. Yes, and we do wish you all the best in your mission in England. And yeah, so thank you so much for being with us tonight. We just want to remind that the recording of this webinar will be uploaded on our page if you want to rewatch it or share. We do invite you not to share it on Facebook or any social media, but if you want to share it with your friends or family, you're more than welcome to do so.